A former U.S. Congressman for Guam says military expansion on the island is happening at rates that haven't been seen since World War II. The governor of Guam says it's a sign of the times to come as more details unfold about the United States' plan to defend its military bases in the Pacific. Now, Guamanians are sounding the alarm about the military ramp-up and what it could mean for them and the region at large. Elisha Foon filed this report from Guam.
As Pacific leaders plan a peace zone, Guam is maintaining peace through nuclear weapons.
I consider that ways and measures to maintain peace in our island. And I know exactly the challenges of militarization. I know that. If they just get up and leave right now, we will be worse off in terms of peace, because I certainly don't want our people to be under Chinese rule.
Guam's governor, Leon Guerrero, says it's about striking a balance between working alongside the US military and indigenous Chamorro. But
North Korea every other week sends missiles out this way. So the bottom line for me as governor is, how do you weigh and balance peace, protection of freedom, democracy, and all of that with the threats of the geopolitics out here?
$8.7 billion is being spent by the US on upcoming missile testing in what's been described by Washington as an arms race against China. But some Guamanians and Chamorros say living alongside the military has come at a cost.
It is terrible that in today's world, under the flag of a country which is supposed to stand for very high ideals of democracy, we are the tip of America's spear. And all of these decisions can be made fundamental decisions about the safety of our families, the safety of our children, the safety of our island, whether we are a target. All of these things can be made without our consent, without our participation. It is the opposite of democratic participation. It is frustrating. It is frightening.
Chamorro historian Dr. Michael Bavacqua says Guam has experienced many conflicts. As a result,
to live in Guam is to live in a space in which a military fence is as common as a coconut tree. A threat of war is as common as an invitation to a party.
The military owns 30% of the land in Guam. It's used for 3 bases by the Navy, military and Air Force. Former US Congressman and now Pacific Islands Security Center Chair Robert Underwood has called the advancement of military activity on Guam alarming.
In terms of Guam, it's historic and comparable to what happened in the immediate World War II period. Unprecedented, and created great and dynamic change in Guam. Since that time, compared to that, is what is occurring today, particularly in connection with this proposed missile defense system.
In December, long-range missiles will be tested from Guam twice a year for a decade. On top of that, 5,000 troops are being sent to Guam from Okinawa, Japan by the end of the year. It's part of the Pentagon's plan, led by the Missile Defense Agency, to build a shield to protect Guam, known as a 360-degree defense system. Missile Defense Agency Public Affairs Officer Mark Wright says it's comparable to the Israel Dome.
We're talking about launching missiles in order to stop, bad missiles that are filled with explosives or other, possibly other things from hitting the island. This would be it's a contingency, of course, but it's a very most remote part of the U.S. territory, and it needs to be protected. And that's what we're talking about doing. So when you say, aren't you concerned about protecting the island? That's why we're doing this whole thing.
The U.S. territory has its own government, but its people cannot vote for the U.S. president, and its only senator in Congress is a non-voting member. While Governor Guerrero says the U.S. military is protecting them from China, her chief advisor on military and regional affairs, Carlota Guerrero, is reconciling with the ramp-up.
I hate the idea, personally, that we're going to have a 360 missile defense system going up, and what that's going to mean and what that's going to look like and what that's going to do.
The Missile Defense Agency's Mark Wright says they're working closely with allies.
Japan, we've worked recently with Australia on missile defense architecture. missile defense systems, trying to, figure out more effective ways that we can use missile defense to defend our various homelands and islands in that area.
Mr. Underwood says Guam is the largest known storehouse for nuclear weapons in the world.
They have divert airfields in the northern Marianas. They have a divert airfield in Palau. They're setting up a radar system there. There's conversation about expanding the runway in Yap. These are areas like if they anticipate that there's going to be a conflict, so they have a place to put their assets so that all their assets won't be here in Guam.
Mr. Underwood questions whether the governor can say no to the military. Leland Beatis, who also works alongside Mr. Underwood, says the military's use of words is telling.
They always say, but if deterrence fails, we must be ready to fight.
Chamorro activist Monica Flores is making sure the voices of fishermen, nuclear radiation survivors and landowners are not forgotten.
This military expansion represents the continued occupation, the continued colonization of our island, an increase in contamination, and we have to measure that against a very long history now of many generations dealing with negative health impacts because of military contamination here, a lot of which was classified and kept from us. So our people didn't even know that they were being exposed to Agent Orange, nuclear radiation. We really do have to assess this incoming project as something that's going to cause a lot of harm, and how can we anticipate more harm if we haven't reconciled with the harms that we're still facing. The threat of nuclear war is very real. The leaders need to rise for diplomacy instead of building up force projection in the Pacific that only provokes conflict, provokes tensions, and stokes war.
During RNZ Pacific's visit to Guam, the Navy, military, and Joint Region Marianas commanders all declined in-person interviews about the military expansion, saying the commanders were all off-island. The Air Force, however, did provide an interview about life on base, but refused to comment on any military expansion and missile testing on Guam.